So let's take a look at the general features of the American system of government. So right off the bat, you have a written constitution. Now this note is parallel, pretty much parallel to what we studied under the fourth unit as the main
Sir,
features. Yes.
so I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So under the American system of government, those 3 points,
yes,
sir, aren't they pretty much the same thing explained in 3 different ways?
That's why I gave a general explanation to all 3. Basically, what it means is that the powers of the central government are mentioned, and whatever the other powers are given to the states. That's a basic idea. It is the same point broken into 3 different points here. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Right. So the first point,
Sir, I also have a question.
Yes.
Basically, so now because they mentioned that in the constitution they have only the federal government's powers, right?
Yes.
So can you use that? So if there's a question that says, like the American Constitution gives like the states a lot of power, is that
Yes.
like for it or against it?
It is pretty much. That's why we consider the US system as one of the best federal systems in the world, one of the broadest, one of the what do you call that? One of the most politically advanced federal systems, because pretty much no other country gives that much of powers to their states. So it's a very few. So you can see that inside the USA, the powers of the central government are limited. No, don't let this deceive you. Limited in the sense that doesn't mean they are like weak. The central government, like the limited list contains all the big guns like national security and budget and foreign policy and all that. That's there. But the point is, there's no limit for state powers. Pretty much all the powers are given to states, other than the ones that are mentioned in the central government list in the constitution. So if you all are writing an answer mentioning that how powerful the US federal system is, what sort of an autonomy it allows their states, that's one of the main things you need to emphasize in your answer. The fact that pretty much all the powers are given to states, and whatever the powers are of the central government is the only thing that is mentioned. Okay, then you have to develop your answer on that. Right. So when it comes to the general features, the first general feature is USA has a written constitution. That's one of the first few things we learned when we learned Unit 4, that a federal country needs a written constitution. Obviously, that's because otherwise, if you don't properly mention what powers goes to whom, it's going to be a mess, because you have 2 levels of government. Then second one, you have traditions and practices. The founders have given the constitution only the general structure. It has been given flesh and blood by traditions and constitutional practices. That means, USA has one of the oldest constitutions in the world, right? Technically speaking, the oldest constitution in the world, because it's written, and it was a written constitution which was written in 1789. It's like a long time ago, about like 3 centuries back, right? So we can see that the founders have given the constitution only the general structure, right? Only the general structure, which means that they only basically mentioned the structural identity of the constitution. And when it was practiced, when the constitution was practiced, the loopholes of filled, and it gradually evolved into the constitution we know today. So some of the features in the constitution were included through practices and traditions to this constitution. Then you have the rigidity. This is also another thing we learned, that a federal constitution must have, that the constitution has to be rigid, because otherwise the central government can the central government can change the constitution in the way they prefer. Therefore, you need the 2/3 support of each of the two houses, right? As well as you need the approval of the states as well. Then, of course, the concept of federalism is a federalism because USA was started with 13 independent governments, where they establish a loose confederation. That's what the teacher's guide says. You can see had earlier formed a loose confederation because they started off as a confederation. They started having the United States central government as a confederation because they were already functioning as separate units. And then it later gradually evolved into a typical federal country what we have today, and now it has 50 states. Then supremacy of the constitution. In the USA, constitution is supreme because unlike in Britain, the parliament is supreme. Like that, in the USA, the constitution is supreme. Then separation of powers is something we know that in the USA, the three houses of the government are properly separated from one another. You have president existing, elected and existing separately. You have the Congress, which is the legislature, separately existing, and the federal Supreme Court, which is separately existing. And you have Bill of Rights. So basically, here Bill of Rights refer to fundamental rights. Okay, so they passed a Bill of Rights and they include that in the Constitution. USA is one of the first country actually to include rights in their Constitution. Now, whereas other countries adopted the concept of fundamental rights following the World War, following the UNCHR in like 1946, USA sort of saw fundamental rights and they include that in their constitution in like 1700s, which is a very bold feature. Then USA has judicial review power. Judicial review power. No P in front, review power. If you read what's under that, the American judiciary has obtained this power by means of interpreting the Constitution. The American Supreme Court declared in its famous case, you don't need to know this name, but if you can remember the name Madison, Marbury vs. Madison, that although the Constitution had not explicitly granted cause to review the laws passed by the Congress, that power was implicit in the Constitution, right? So basically, the US Supreme Court can reverse any law on the basis that it violates the Constitution. So the US Supreme Court can interpret the Constitution and reverse laws. So in practice, what basically happens is, in the US, there are two ways you can pass a law. Number one, president can make a decision and get it approved in the Congress. Actually, there are three ways. One is people in the Congress can pass the law and send it to president's approval. That's one way. Or the other way, president can make a decision and send it to the approval of the Congress. And when the Congress approves it, it's a law. If not, president can make laws himself, which we call executive orders, where he puts an executive order saying that I want this to be a law without the approval of the Congress. And those executive orders are the ones that are normally reversed by the Supreme Court in the US checks and balances system. Okay, so the recent example is Donald Trump passed a law in 2017, I think, banning people from visiting the USA from countries like, I think it was 6 or 7 countries in that list: Iran, Iraq, South Sudan, and all those countries. And the Supreme Court of the USA reviewed that power and they reversed it, saying it violates the Constitution because US Constitution is against discrimination, right? Okay. Then you have popular sovereign.
Sir,
Yes.
Can you say that limits the state power as well?
Limits
Because you can use the powers like of the state. So like when you have judicial review, you can use it against state governments also, right?
I'm exactly not aware of it, but as far as I remember, that's not allowed. If I remember,
Uh,
the central government judiciary cannot review a law passed in a regional government. That's in Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, something passed in the provincial council can be reversed by the Supreme Court, the central government Supreme Court. If I remember it correct, I'll look into it and let you all know. But this should be the way that a state passed law, a region state passed law can be reversed by that state's judiciary. If the Texas state government passes a law, the Supreme Court of Texas should reverse that law. Understand?
sir, you're getting a little cut in the middle. Like certain stuff you say are not like
Is that for everyone?
clear.
Others can hear me properly, right?
Yeah, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So what I basically told you is that when it comes to state passed laws, okay, if it's a law passed in a state, the judicial review power can be used by that state judiciary, not the central government judiciary, right? Now, I'm not exactly sure about this, but going with common sense, given the fact that USA has a powerful federal system, I would be really surprised if the US central government judiciary can reverse the laws of US states. Very unlikely. Understand?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So, given how the US federal system works, it should be a system where the state judiciary can reverse, like in the regional judiciary can reverse the decision of the regional government. And some states may have judicial review power, some states may not. It's up to the state. Central government judiciary doesn't get involved in state affairs. Understand?
So like state governments, it's a choice for them to have judicial review or not.
Yes.
As
yes.
in their judiciaries.
Yes, because USA.
So when they say, when they mean general feature, they're talking about the federal government.
Federal government. We are looking at the system. No? We are not looking into specifics of each state, because US states are quite different from one another. Now, example, you have areas like Alabama where LGBT rights are not there, gay marriages are not allowed, but incestual marriages are allowed. And you have areas like Vermont, New York, where gay marriages are allowed, incestual marriages are not allowed, right? Then you have areas, several states that have gun laws where you can just buy a gun from a shop, like, you buy candy. Or there are areas that they follow like strict laws controlling gun activities. And you have certain areas that they have death penalty. Some areas they don't have death penalty, some states. Some states have bicameral legislatures inside. Now California, the legislature of California is bicameral. Inside, the state legislature itself is bicameral because California is a big state. Understand? Some states have like unicameral. So depending on the different. Yes.
So they can control whether they choose to have death penalty or not?
Yes. The judicial system is up to you. Some states have death penalty, some states don't. Some states follow even death penalty, some states follow hanging, some states follow electric chair, some states follow lethal injection. So it depends on the state. Now there's a fun story about that there are two states right next to each other. One is Kansas, other one is Missouri, right? So in one of the states, the legal age of drinking is 18. In other state, the legal age of drinking is 21. Right? If I remember, in Missouri, it's 18. In Kansas City, in Kansas, is 21. So people in like the teenagers who are like 19, 20 in Kansas, they can't drink in their state. So you have to drive to the other state if you want to go to a bar. Like things like that. So it differs from state to state in how the legal system they follow in different states, right? So when it comes to central government, you have the judicial review power. And this judicial review power is allowed to ensure checks and balances, that the judiciary would sort of limit the powers of the legislature and the executive of the central government, right? Then you
Okay,
have,
thank you.
you have popular sovereignty, which means the sovereignty belongs to the people, which is now USA is a republic now. So this is the basic idea of republic, where you have popular sovereignty. And of course, the next point is republicanism, which is basically the same thing. That means the president is directly elected by the people. So the people should be allowed to choose the head of the state because they are a republic, right? Then the American government follows the presidential system of government, which is something you guys are aware. Then there's dual citizenship because USA is a federal country. If you live in the US, you have two citizenships. Like you have now in Sri Lanka, you have your NIC and your driver's license, right? Both carry the same national logo, right? So I have my NIC and I have my driver's license, right? So both carry this. This is my NIC, this is my driver's license, right? So both carry the same logo, as you can see, same logo. That's because we are a unitary country. My driver's license and my NIC both are given by our central government. But in the USA, your driver's license would carry the logo of your state. And your social security number will be given by the national, the central government. It's because in USA, you have two citizenships. Okay. One for your state, one for your central government. Right. So those are the main general features of the American federal system. Now let's take a look at powers of the American federal government. Now, as I mentioned, these are the powers that are mentioned in the Constitution. Okay. The Constitution explicitly enumerates the legislative, executive, and judicial powers of the federal government. There are some implied powers as well to the government. For example, the power to establish banks. Right. Now, this is a power. This is an implied power, which means that the power to establish banks is not directly mentioned in the Constitution. It's implied. Now, when you say that the USA central government in the USA has powers over financial institutes, that implies that they can establish banks. So this is sort of like developed through practices. Then, although the powers of the central government are separated and clear in the Constitution, the central government powers over state governments depend on 4 factors. Supremacy of the federal laws enacted by the legislature of the central government, powers over war, provisions regarding interstate, international trade and commerce, powers to raise taxes and spend them. So, first on supremacy of the federal laws means when it comes to a crucial factor, crucial thing, where central government and the state government both sort of clash. Now, example, police is something that is controlled by the state governments, not the central government. But military is something sort of controlled by the central government. So if a world war, something like that occurs, if some invasion on USA or something like that occurs, let's say there are 2 laws that are like, when it comes to the police, there are 2 laws that are in conflict with one another. In such case, the federal law should prevail. So let's say the police officers have to follow one law which is given by their state, but there's another law newly passed by the central government which gives them a different order. So in that case, they should obey the central government because federal laws are supreme. Now keep in mind, this is very rare because they have clearly mentioned what powers comes under the central government. So very rarely these kind of conflicts happen. But in case of a conflict, the federal law should prevail, not the state law. Federal law should prevail. That's just how it is. That's how a federal system works. Even in a federal system, the central government should have the upper hand up to a certain extent, right? Then powers over war, of course, when there's a war happening, central government has the authority. And then interstate affairs, international trade, commerce, central government has the authority and the power to raise taxes and how to spend taxes. So all up to the central government. Right. Then it says, because of these powers of the federal government, some state governments complain that their power to look after their own affairs have been curtailed. So of course, some states actually complain saying the federal, now they have one of the best federal systems in the world, right? But still, some of the states in the USA complain saying that say federal government has too much powers. A feature emerging in the evolution of the American constitutional system is the gradual strengthening and the strengthening of the central federal government. The 14th Constitution Amendment, enacted in 1868, has also contributed to this tendency. This amendment restricted the powers of the state legislatures to pass laws limiting citizens' rights, liberty, equality before the law. Okay. Now, this was passed in 1868, following the American Civil War. This was right after Lincoln's assassination, Abraham Lincoln's assassination. So you can see a feature emerge in the evolution of the American constitutional system is the gradual strengthening of the federal government. You guys know USA started off as a confederation. It means the central government was just there. It was a loose confederation, loose central government. It was just there because the regions were governing themselves anyway. And you guys know a confederation gradually turns into that. So the USA was started off like a couple of independent kids sort of adapting a foster father. It's like you just stay there as a loose guardian. We are already governing ourselves. We've been governing ourselves. So gradually it turns into a system where the father gets more and more authority over the kids, and now he's like a typical father. He has certain level of control over the kids. So you can see that a landmark of this development, which is the 14th Constitution Amendment in 1868. Now it says the amendment restricted powers of the state legislature to pass laws limiting citizens' rights, liberty, equality before the law. Now, if you guys are smart and well aware and have general knowledge and have common sense, this should ring a bell. At least because I said this is following Lincoln's death and the Civil War, right? Now, why did the Civil War occur in the USA? It's because the federal government declared that slavery is not allowed anymore. So the southern states were offended because they believe that slaves are property, and saying no, slavery is allowed is a restriction on their right to property. Hence, they said they don't want to stay in the USA, that they didn't want to stay in the United States, and they wanted to break a separate country called the Confederate of America. So the southern state fought with the northern states, and the northern states won. Basically, the American central government won, and the southern state failed to break away. Right. So after that, they passed this amendment preventing, especially these southern, because their concern was the southern states who turned out to be like they were pro-racist and pro-slavery. They were worried that the southern states will pass laws in their legislatures discriminating people, limiting citizens' rights, liberty, and equality before the law. So therefore, they amended the constitution saying the state legislatures can't pass such laws, restricting people's rights and liberty. So since then, the central government have been like a better grip and basically the upper hand in the American federal system. Right. Now, you are given 4 points to explain this basic idea, the powers of the central government. So number one, you have provisions relating to the supremacy of federal laws. You don't need to remember all these articles and stuff. It's basically, this is an explanation of the 4 points we mentioned before. If you remember the basic idea, that's good enough, right? Supremacy of federal laws, as I told you, if there's a collision between two laws, conflict between two laws, federal law should prevail. And war-related powers, of course, it's the president of the USA who has the sole authority to declare war and peace, right? Then you have interstate regulations and international trade and all those stuff, the economic aspect of the country. And you have powers of taxation, how to tax people and how to spend tax money. Those powers go to the central government, right? Then you have powers of state governments. The American Constitution does not enumerate powers of the state government. Highlight that part. The Constitution does not enumerate. In other words, there is no state list in the American Constitution. Back to where we started, right? In the beginning, I mentioned that there is no list containing provincial the state powers, like not like Sri Lanka, where we have a list of provincial council powers. Instead, what the Constitution does is to state the powers that are not enumerated for the central government are powers of the state government, subject to the limitations given in the Constitution and constitutional limitations, right? So, I have no idea why they mean subject to the limitations given in the Constitution or constitutional limitations. It's basically the same thing in two grammatical formats. But the idea is clear. So they basically say, dear states, just take a look at this list. These are the powers of the central government. Anything that is not included in this are yours. However, keep in mind, you can enjoy whatever the powers that are not in this list within the framework of constitutional limitations. Okay, so let's take a look at what are the limitations, which is there after that, right? In order to ensure proper functioning of federalism, the American Constitution has imposed certain limits on powers of the state. For example, states have no authority to enter into agreements with foreign governments, authorize citizens of foreign states in trade relations with those states, coining and printing money, issuing bills of credit, export and import taxation, levying taxes on foreign ships, from foreign ships, station armed when it comes to those military issues during, except for National Guard, then engaging in war, right? So these restrictions are there. Like you can do whatever you want, but these are the prohibited areas. As long as you don't touch any of these, it's all yours. Go nuts. Okay. Then, in order to ensure the proper functioning of federalism, there are limitations on the powers of the central government as well. Okay, central government also has a couple of restrictions. Let's see what are those. The federal government should not exercise in powers in such a way as to limit the powers and responsibilities of the states. The federal government does not have unlimited powers on interstate commerce. There are some judicial decisions preventing the federal governments from giving orders to state governments on the pretext of making the implementation of federal laws effective. Once again, this is like going all around the same few points, right? So basically the basic idea is the states have their power. They need to keep in mind those powers are given under restrictions. Meanwhile, the central government also has a responsibility to act in a way that doesn't sort of like violate the autonomy of the state governments. Despite these safeguards, powers of the federal government over state governments have increased in recent times due to variety of reasons, right? There are 4 reasons given in this. So on some matters, state governments have to demand on the federal governments. Because of this rise of because of the rise of American nationalism, American national identity has grown into importance than state identities. There have also been judicial decisions favoring the federal government over the states. Despite judicial decisions restricting powers of the federal government over state governments, federal government has been able to win over state governments through federal grants Okay, the basic idea is this: the central government is rich, state governments are not, right? So sometimes when it comes to certain matters, not only for money, sometimes for legal provisions also, legal backing also, the state governments have to depend on the federal government, right? And also, um, the federal government gives grants, financial grants, legal grants to states, right? And there are certain judicial decisions claiming that states can't do this, states can't do that, and all that, restricting the powers of the states even further, making central government more powerful. Then you have rise of American nationalism. This means, as a country, the whole patriotism um, and all these things, especially after the world wars and 9/11 attacks, like they started carrying the American flag rather than their state flag. So the identity of them as a nation has become more important, which has made the federal government even more stronger. Okay. Then there's a small note about interstate relations, right? Interstate relations in America are regulated by the federal provisions of the Constitution. So these also included in Article 4. Only the federal Congress has the power to admit new states to the Union. No state government can favor or discriminate against a citizen of any state on his or her fundamental rights. States should guarantee the same rights and privileges its citizens to enjoy to citizens of other states as well. These privileges are the protection of the law, right to lawful employment, and the right to judicial protection. According to Article 4 of the Constitution, no state should provide protection to criminals of other states. So these points are sort of like straightforward points which explains the sort of the coordination between the states. So only the federal Congress. What is the federal Congress? We are talking about the central government legislature, right? The American Congress. We call it federal Congress because the legislature, the central government is known as the federal government, and the legislature's name is the Congress. So that's why you call it the federal Congress. So only they can admit new states to the union, and no state government should violate fundamental rights of their citizens. Then, of course, no state should provide protection to criminals of another state. That is done to make sure that the criminals can't run from a state to another state to hide from the police of a state that he committed a crime, and so on, right? And of course, this fifth one, the state should function on the principle that complete trust. It means that every state trusts the laws and enactments of every other state. So, and there's another note under the interstate cooperation. So basically, all these points revolve around the fact that states should maintain a healthy coordination between each other. Okay. Interstate cooperation, a key feature of the American federalism is not only the division of powers between the federal and state government, but also the cooperation between state governments. The Constitution provides for the states to resolve their disputes peacefully. A state can go to the Supreme Court on a dispute with another. You guys remember that when we studied Unit 4 federalism, we studied that it is necessary for a federal country to have an independent judiciary. It is very crucial. And one point I mentioned is that when there's a dispute between two states, now I explained to you in a hypothetical example where we pretended that in some parallel universe Sri Lanka is a federal country, and I explained to you all in an example where the Sabaragamuwa state and the western state getting into a conflict over the Kaluganga, right? And a power plant and crops, if you guys remember, right? And I told you guys that the two states can get into a conflict over the water, right? So in such case, the court should be independent enough to resolve that, right, in a very fair manner. So that's a basic idea. In the USA, they have this system where the Supreme Court gets involved in case of a dispute where two states are having a problem, right? And other than that, in the USA, each state is given equal powers. So you have symmetrical power division within the US federal system, right? Then you have a note under national courts and federalism. The sharing of power between the central and national governments and the state governments is decided on political practice. However, courts also have a role to play in. Right, so this is the basic idea. What this explains is, as I told you all in the beginning, what happens in the USA is powers of the central government are mentioned. Whatever the remaining powers are given to the states. But there were several court decisions where the court decided how the power should be divided, and these court decisions have also come into play. These court decisions have also decided how the power should be divided, and mostly these court decisions favor the central government, right? That's a basic idea. You guys can read this and understand. Then the last note for the USA is the constitutional amendment process in America, right? So this explains after 2/3 support from both houses in the Congress, the amendment should be passed by a 2/3 of state legislatures. This approval can be obtained either by individual state legislatures meeting separately or at a common constitutional convention. States can also initiate a constitutional amendment process. If a 2/3 of the state legislatures ask for the Congress to amend the Constitution, the Congress can call a constitutional convention. Subsequently, the amendment should be passed by a 3/4 of the states, right? So this basically means that if you are to amend the US Constitution, you need to get a 2/3 approval from both houses of the central government. That's step number 1, right? And step number 2 is it requires the approval of the states, right? So this is a little complex. You might get confused. So I'll give it to you in the simplest way that you can write. Either 2/3 or a 3/4 of the states should agree depending on the circumstances. Just keep that in mind. So there are 2 ways. Either you can get it from like each state, or you can put all the state representatives together and have something called a constitutional convention. If it's a constitutional convention, it requires a 3/4 majority. If you get it passed in each, then 2/3 is enough. If that is too confusing for you, just keep in mind either 2/3 or a 3/4, depending on the circumstances. However, when it comes to central government, it's always 2/3 majority in each house. And the amendment can go either ways. Central government pass and you throw it to the states to pass, or state pass that and throw it to the central government. Okay. Whatever the basic idea is, what you need to understand here is the USA has a rigid constitutional amendment process, which requires the participation from both state and federal governments. Right. Then we have the Indian format. Before moving to the Indian format, do I have any questions? Do I get any questions? Do you guys have any questions? So, no questions. Right. Okay. So just take a 5 minutes break, and I shall resume in 5 minutes, and let's move to the Indian format. Huh?